In this episode, I'll be giving my review and reaction to the 2011 movie Limitless. Let's get right into Limitless. Limitless is a movie that honestly I'd heard from a friend, and they said that it's kind of a middling movie, can be fun at times, is an interesting watch, but I was not really turned on to the Limitless sphere until my Instagram reels became flooded with Limitless content. And maybe I shouldn't have followed this blueprint after watching Knight of Cups being sucked in through that lens of reels, which is Knight of Cups is my lowest rated movie on the channel so far. But when you see this video of Bradley Cooper running in a city and asking anybody if they've jumped off a cliff or if anybody's ever jumped, you have to watch. I mean, literally, my Instagram is still all just Bradley Cooper in Limitless, and the description of whatever the reel is. It's like whenever if your friend is like, once you realize you can just like not have a girlfriend and live life great. The caption is always Limitless is a 2011 science fiction. It's like a paragraph. It's some sort of algorithm. I'm putting that algorithm on my Instagram reel for this movie, and hopefully it pops off. But no, in all seriousness, this movie was, kind of run of the mill of what I'd expect. It did have some parts that I thought were really enjoyable. This is actually pretty similar to the most recent review I did on the channel of In the Name of the Father. I think the beginning half of this movie is much stronger than the latter half of the movie, where it just descends into pure chaos and pure nonsense, in my opinion. And especially the real ending of this movie is truly, truly disappointing. And there's no moral story. There's no, comeuppance that was kind of deserved, in my opinion, throughout this movie. And yeah, you have great performance from Bradley Cooper. He's energizable, fun. He's a cool guy to follow around. Where it's an interesting start for his character and the journey his character takes, and obviously the whole concept of the movie, taking this drug that expands your brain to 90% or 100% of you being able to use your brain power. That's the main sort of driving force of this movie. What would you do? How would you be able to use it? And of course, I'm actually going to draw a parallel to a movie I didn't even feel confident enough to review on the channel, that I'm forgetting the name of it this time, but like the first ever time travel movie where you kind of just use it to become a businessman and make money in the stock market. Because if you know more about the stock market, Primer, that's the movie I'm thinking of, Primer. But yeah, I think this movie, it's not the most boring movie in the world for sure. Like there definitely were some strong parts of it, and no matter how ridiculous it gets towards the end, it definitely kept me entertained throughout, despite some of the decisions that were made throughout the movie, both in terms of cheesy music, kind of cheesy effects, cheesy shots. There was a story there that was worth following, and it was an enjoyable ride for most of it. So, I have pretty middling opinions on this one, but the ending was, kind of leaves you with a sour taste in your mouth the more you think about it. But it's a thriller, so there's some thrills. It was enjoyable. So let's get into my thoughts and reactions throughout the movie, starting with one of the all-time beginnings to a movie. And if you know anything about me, if you've talked to me about one specific movie in mind, Man on a Ledge, we get that introduction right here. Bradley Cooper starting this movie out on top of a ledge. Come on, man. It can't get any better than this. And there's a Russian man banging on the door, and there's dead bodies everywhere, which, you know, this is a good hook, introduction to the movie, but one that completely just is not relevant in my mind throughout this movie. All I thought about was him on the ledge. I wasn't thinking about the dead bodies. I didn't even remember there were dead bodies until I just read my own notes on the first scene. But this sets you up really well for like, how did I get here type of story, and how does he end up on a ledge? Is he going to jump? What's going to happen? So I like this introduction, especially for a movie that's not taking itself so seriously. And maybe my critique needs to be a little bit calmed down, because this movie doesn't really take itself that seriously. It's just him on a ledge, and won't he jump off the ledge? Like, of course he's not going to jump, but you know, cool introduction. An introduction I actually really enjoyed. Good hook to the movie, good start. And then it's sort of like a how did he get here when you meet his true character, Eddie. He is a bum. He's a bum. And I'm now like, there's actually some parallels between this movie and The Name of the Father, where I was very critical of Daniel Day-Lewis's character in that movie, of being a bum throughout the movie and being very not empathizable. That's not a word. I didn't have much empathy towards either main character in either of those stories, and I didn't have much empathy towards Eddie, especially when we learn his true beginnings. He's this bum writer who's just leeching off of his girlfriend, leeching off of his parents' money, leeching off a book deal, doesn't get anything done for the book. Not only that, we have two very drastic examples of his behavior in the public eye. He vomits on his boss's desk, which got him fired from his true job or whatever, and turned him into an author. If you vomit on your boss's desk, that's you're cooked, brother. And remember this stuff for later, okay? Vomiting on your boss's desk, okay, maybe you had a bad day, maybe that's just a stupid thing to do. Yeah, it is, okay? How about stealing your dying aunt's Percocet? What's the ethics behind that, dude? You really like this guy, and maybe this was a little hint to his, sort of addiction with NXT drugs throughout the movie that this was going to happen to him being addicted to Percocet. But right there, that should have set off alarm bells. But it's Bradley Cooper. He's charming. We want to like him. He's the main character. But stealing your dying aunt's Percocet. I mean, come on, man. We get to, the big part of the movie, or the big kind of hook into the story of the movie, Vern, who's his ex-wife's brother, Vern, and he's a very familiar actor, but I don't know his name. Anyways, he takes this drug, or Vern gives him this drug. He's like, try one of these, bro. And then he's like, I won't do it. But of course, we know this movie's called Limitless. We know the premise of it. Of course, he's going to end up taking the movie. And of course, once he takes the movie, it turns him around instantly, watching him get home. And he not only he's in this confrontation. He's in like a brief period of when you're about to get high, but you're not high yet, and you just had taken the drugs. I don't know if there's a specific term for that, but he's right there where he's maybe about to get high, and then he gets high in this confrontation with his landlord's wife, who usually they're beefing back and forth. He now is able to like finesse her and riz her and make her like really enjoy his presence, and he like wins the argument. He alphas her but also rizzes her. It's crazy to watch. If you have NXT, if you have 100% of your brain, you can become an alpha, guys. Okay, so just take NXT. My link down below in the description. No, I'm just kidding. I'm questioning. So these people have been arguing and arguing for years. This woman, seems to be happily married despite her character and maybe choice in characters. And of course, he just bangs. He gets with her. Really, dude? Where's the ethic? Actually, maybe there is something to be said for the ethical line throughout this movie of, Bradley Cooper's character of Eddie is just a scumbag, and we were kind of just dismissing it because it was NXT and like seeing the cool effects of NXT, but the things he's doing that are cool in NXT, maybe he's just a fucking scumbag. Maybe that's the whole point, and maybe I'm missing out on this shit. I don't know. Found it hard to believe that woman who they'd been arguing back and forth for years, that she would just put everything down and bang him because he's on NXT now, but that's kind of like the initial way that Neil Berger chose us to see the effects of this drug. Neil Berger famously, actually, I do need to bring up Neil Berger because this movie felt very Divergent coded. Like there were kind of those transition scenes, like Run Boy Run and that type of stuff, like the cheesiness of it. There is definitely a style you can see of from Divergent to Limitless. I also did a review of The Illusionist on the channel, if you've watched that review, but there's not many parallels between. I think The Illusionist is in a class of its own, where Divergent and Limitless are kind of similar movies, actually around the same time frame too, so he's probably in the same sort of mindset there. Back to Eddie. He's now, he needs it all. The guy was stealing his dead aunt's Percocets. Of course, he needs to take this drug as much as possible. He sees the potential. He cleans his apartment in like half a second, which was like an interesting scene to watch of him just going in fast motion, blah, blah, blah. Probably a cool shot for 2011, but we're in 2026, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. He's basically just the drug dealer's bitch. And I think, this happens in a lot of stories where there's a drug dealer, the guy, all of a sudden you need to go run an errand for him. Maybe some people out there have had personal experiences with this stuff. And in order to get more of his drug, he's got to go downstairs, get breakfast, get a suit, basically just being a complete, person who's going to follow everything this guy says. The drug addiction's bad, but of course he comes back upstairs, and who's there or who's not there? It's Vern, and Vern's dead. And ethics aside, once again, and now I'm realizing, going through my notes of this movie, that Eddie was just a scumbag the whole time. His ex-wife's brother's dead, probably had a decent relationship there, and he's not worried about that. He's worried about finding the stash, and he finds the stash in the oven, so of course he finds that, is able to finesse out of the police being any sort of interested in what he has to say about this. I think he had like one questioning scene, but if I were the police, I'd be like, dude, you were there, like what happened? Tell us, because you're obviously just lying about some bullshit. But what do I know? I'm not a police officer, and I don't think we're supposed to take the world that seriously in this movie. It's just my opinion. But Vern is now dead, and Eddie has the whole stash of NXT, which I think there might have been 2,000 pills of NXT in that stash, because the way that Eddie keeps pulling NXT out of his ass throughout the duration of this movie is insane. But we'll keep it moving. So Eddie tries to get some Riz back with the ex-wife. Turns out she's gonna play a part later on, but she calls about the brother Vern. She's like, "You were there when my brother died. What happened?" And he's like, "Hey, we were married. Let's like get back together. Let's meet tonight." And she's like, "Hell no." And we learn later on why she's a little bit hesitant toward to be around Eddie. I think she mentioned something to Eddie about the NXT, but he kind of dismisses it at this point. So this is my favorite part of the movie coming up. The Instagram Reels clips that have just been circulating and flooding feeds out there. He becomes real hype and just is on planes living the life, kind of living that luxury life of not having to pay the price yet of anything, just being on NXT, being able to sit in conversations with people, get with whoever he wants, girl wise, and just live the life. This is it. And he's not even in the period where he wants to make money. He's just like having adventures. And I don't know why using like 100% of your brain would require you or like make you want to jump 100 feet off of a cliff, but it makes for some really good Instagram reels. So, I did like this part, seeing this actually play out in the movie, like the little compilation there. I did enjoy that. Now that he's kind of off NXT for a while, he's kind of addicted. He thinks of how to make this into a real lifestyle and make money and get even more rich and get more power. Obviously, you need money to have power in society. And he did sell his book, so there's that of, he was supposed to be a best-selling author, and he is, his book does well. His boss is very impressed with it, but he wants more now. And he's going to start with the stock market, and his girlfriend, not his ex-wife, comes back to him. You know, she was kind of a litmus test, I think, in this movie of the ethics of it, and she's not really even like a good soldier in this. So she comes back when he's on the drug, and then when he's off the drug, she kind of like is like fuck you. So you know, not a lot of people have ethical moral lines in this movie. She does draw a line at a point later on, but I thought that weak of her to come back after well. You can take it either way, both ways. Where he was bum, and then she comes back. It's like, oh, you got yourself together, or it's like you're only here because I'm good now. You didn't want me at my lowest point. Whatever perspective you want to choose there. So we really just see talents coming out of Eddie that you never would have expected when he becomes a UFC champion and just destroys a group of people, and he knows how to fight now. I don't know. That was just just in there that like now you know everything about everything. So I think Neil Berger was like, not if you know everything about everything, what would you do? And like you can fight people, you can do whatever you want. That was kind of just an example, but absolutely ridiculous scene of him just beating up 8 people, which maybe sets up for the conclusion of this movie. He runs out of the drug, which was bound to happen at one point, but remember, Vern has like a stash of like somehow 3,000 NXT because, there just keeps happening to be spare pills popping out of the thing, but he becomes very, headaches, potentially in danger here. And this is where we get our callback to Melissa, the ex wife, where she is having a meeting with him. She wants to let him know, hey, I was on NXT too, and it's impossible to get off of. My life went to shit without it. And I've kind of been trying to pull back the reins since then. They had broken up. She actually broke up with her new husband as well, has the kid. She's like, I can't do this. And I almost died in the hospital. Like, it's a dangerous drug if you don't have it. We have Lindy. Not, we have Lindy, Melissa. This guy's been banging everybody, right? And actually, there's a scene in there that I don't even talk about where he is like at a hotel with a girl and then she ends up dead. That's kind of like the big moral question of this movie is, did he kill that girl? I'm just tending to believe he did on NXT, and just gets away with it. Of like, if you had to commit a perfect murder, how would you get away with it? He has the lawyer who helps me get out of the questioning, but I think we're supposed to believe that he did kill her, and because it's like he was the only one on the scene. Who else would have killed her? But and why would she be dead in the hotel room? I think something must have happened there where it's like foggy memory, where he's at a point at this point in the movie when he's with the girl, he's so deep on NXT, he like walks blocks and doesn't know where he is. Like, no matter how good of a guy you might be, and we've seen that Eddie's not even a good guy, you don't even know what you're doing on NXT. So I think that might have been a kill for Eddie, which won't be the last of this movie. There's other side plots that happen. So there's a guy who's been following him the whole movie, basically, once he figures out that he knows about the NXT, and there's another guy he takes a loan out of. So the guy who's been following the whole movie is now into Lindy as Lindy leaves with their office. I think he like goes into her office and basically dies in her arms and is like, please give me more NXT. But the guy who's been following them knows that. So once he sees Lindy, he follows her, and not only that, this is when it just completely gets out of control, where he kills 2 people in plain sight, no problem there, and she now has to take a pill because she has the stash. She's in like this rock formation, doesn't know how to do it, but he's like, if you take an NXT, you'll get through it. And I saw this one coming immediately. That was also another thing I didn't really like about this movie. It was kind of predictable of what was going to happen. You know, it's a baseline story, so that is how it is. She of course has to take the pill, and when she takes the pill, she is able to run away. The big plan is to run straight ahead, which the guy could have easily caught her, but luckily she picks up a little girl at the ice rink, and uses her skate to slice him in the face with the girl. So that was the big NXT plan. If you're using 100% of your brain, you'd know to do that. So I don't know. It's just like ridiculous at this point, but we ball, you know? So keeping it moving, Eddie now has his stash back in NXT, the unlimited somehow 3,000 pills of Vern. And yeah, at a point he had a lab guy make NXT, but we don't really see that take place. So we're supposed to just assume that this is all Vern's stash, which Vern had a crazy amount of NXT, which I've kind of harped on as well. But Robert De Niro is also in this movie as Van Loon, this like Warren Buffett type figure of the stock market. Doesn't impress him at first, but then he's able to reel it back in. Then when he's off NXT, he like fumbles the bag with Van Loon. But now that he has the security team, he has the stash of NXT, he's ready to go back to Van Loon and be a part of his business empire. And so everything falls apart now. His security team is killed to where, you know, his follower guy is not fond of him. He gets sent the hands in the mail, and his security guards, and I don't know who else's hand was in there. I actually really don't. That was a kind of a confusing scene where he gets sent this package, opens it, and he sees the hands. But everything starts falling apart then when he doesn't have the NXT. There's supposed to be this big merger, but he realizes that the person who him and Van Loon are merging with is also on NXT. And then his lawyer just completely scums him because he took the NXT off of his jacket when he was in the questioning for the murder potentially. It's a whole fucking, you know, ruse here at the end of crazy shit. But we get back to our beginning scene of him on the ledge. And shocker, he doesn't actually jump off the ledge because he wants to live, but he does fumble his last NXT off of like down a drain or something. This time he's now being pursued by the guy who he took a loan out of. He's also in the top of a penthouse of an impenetrable fortress house that he lives in, but no, because the Russian people just break in with a chainsaw and just completely own him. But he finds the last NXT. Well, no, no, he doesn't. So he's out of NXT, he's down bad, and he sees there's one thing. The Russian guy has a knife, which they all should be on NXT. I know at least the main lone guy's on NXT, but maybe his henchman wasn't. He takes the knife out of the guy's pocket, stabs him, and then he's not even on NXT at this point. But he drinks the guy's blood. So the guy's must have this. Yeah, this guy had to be on NXT, but he's just an NZT. Is it NZT? And I've been saying NXT this whole time. That's hilarious. But he drinks this guy's blood, who he just killed, who should be smarter than him in theory, whatever. But he's now vampiring off the ground to get NZT. And now he's high on it too. So what does this mean? He pops the syringe out of his mouth and gets one henchman to shoot the other guy because he's blinded in one eye, and then finishes the last guy with a piano. This was absurd. This was ridiculous. I mean, really, just a truly ridiculous ending to this movie. And you know, he all of a sudden becomes God from drinking the guy's NXT. You know, it's crazy in nature, but this was a fucked up story. And to end it all out, Van Loon figures him out. He's becoming this political figure. I guess is now his next venture is becoming a politician. Van Loon tries to own him. He's like, listen, I know you're on NXT. I can cut off your supply. We shut down all your labs. And then he's like, bitch, I'm always going to have NXT and you're a little loser. Bye. And so Eddie wins, which I thought was completely absurd and ridiculous. We get to watch this guy be a scumbag for an hour and 45 minutes and just win at the end. You know, and maybe there are some movies that need more evil endings, but the way this story was going, I thought he should have either got off NXT and like won somehow, or just like gone out strong, dying, or he should have just had to eat shit on NXT. But the way they set it up at the end with him being a politician, it didn't really work out. He gets to marry his girl back, who's, you know, kind of just a simp for him at this point, because she was especially against the NXT, and now he's just been doing it this whole time. So really, I thought the way that we got here was kind of screwed up, and you know, I don't know. I didn't love this the through lines of this movie, the story. So with that being said, it wasn't a pretty entertaining watch throughout. Got ridiculous towards the end, which I didn't know if this movie was really taking itself seriously or not. I chose to take it like somewhat seriously, and I was still pretty disappointed with the ending, the morality of it all, and just how absurd it got. So I'm giving it a 7.2. It definitely wasn't a waste of time. It was an interesting concept. I thought Bradley Cooper was pretty cool in this movie. Like I thought he played a good job in this one. The side characters are kind of meh, and I feel like some of the storylines are just a little bit ridiculous, but 7.2 is where I'm going to land on this one. So, where does this movie relate to the other movies we reviewed so far on the channel? This is number 75 of 103 movies reviewed so far, tying Eastern Promises at a 7.2. I would slightly take this movie over Eastern Promises. Splitting hairs, they're both 7.2s. It does fall behind The Illusionist, which was a 7.8. Neil Berger directing both of those movies. This falls behind Looper, which was an 8.6, the two science fiction thrillers we have so far. This falls behind Superman, 8.2. Remember Bradley Cooper in Superman? Me neither, but he was in it. And finally, this loses out to Backdraft, Awakenings, and beats out The Deer Hunter, Robert De Niro. So this becomes the third of fourth Robert De Niro movies on the rankings. So what's coming up next on the Dubcast? I'm on a little vacation when this video is out right now. Spoiler alert, but we have content for you in the meantime. Social media, we've been hitting it hard. I got clowned for my takes on Mall episodes 5 and 6 this week, so go check that out on TikTok or YouTube if you've been watching Mall. Disagree with me or agree with me if you want. Daredevil, don't know what I'm going to do yet for that one. May do a full episode for Daredevil and then a little short for that one. Survivor will be short this week, but we usually do a full episode and a little short for that one too. So those three shows we've been covering weekly. NFL mock draft we did on Tuesday evening, which was a great time. I'm assuming it hasn't been happening yet when I'm filming this, but it is what it is. And then NBA playoffs, we're coming back week to week with a live stream before each round. So a lot of fun on the first round one there. Can't wait to do the second round predictions and first round recap with some guests, Ali and Mikey, and then maybe another potential guest, the panel. And finally, movies will just come as they go. We're clean on the movies right now. We're caught up on movies, so can't tell you what the next review will be, but I have a major watch list to get to and want to see some stuff in theaters. So who knows what'll happen in the next couple months for movie reviews. But stay tuned. Turn the bell on. Subscribe, like, comment, dislike. Do what you got to do. Appreciate you making it to the end of the video. And if you enjoyed, make sure to show me love back or comment if you disagree with what I have to say. I'm engaging. I'm a responder. I have to respond to comments. Okay, so let me know your thoughts on Limitless down below. And as always, be easy, y'all.